So I think this is a good time that now we've kind of fleshed out
Good
the
game.
aura
Yeah.
and mystique of EG to talk about the transition to Twitch, because that's kind of the next major chapter in this story. And it takes some context. So basically, guys, what ended up happening, what was it? 2014 was the year when the acquisition occurred?
I think it was
Do
the
you
end of
guys know off the top
2014,
of your
wasn't
head?
it? I believe
Yes,
it was. Yeah.
Yes. Yep.
So
2014.
in 2014,
August
so this was
2014 specifically.
yeah, this was after EG had become part of the LCS, right? They were there in the very early seasons of the LCS before bowing out, and then like rebuying in later on, which we'll get to into the kind of peak 6 era when they purchased the franchise slot once again. But EG was huge during this time. They had a very successful Dota team that under Twitch would actually win. When they were part of Twitch, they would win the international. And you may be wondering, like, why the fuck was an esports team bought by Twitch? And also there was it was also part of what was called Good Game Agency, which was the brand that was getting sponsorship deals, right?
Or both Alliance and EG at this point, right?
Yes, we're under Good Game Agency.
Yeah.
And so this was an acquisition that Twitch had made, and Twitch didn't really think through the implications of what would happen when they acquired a team, because this is when EG and Alliance became basically the targets of every other single major esports team at the time, because all of a sudden they had massive financial backing, not only from Twitch, but from Amazon, right? Because this was post Amazon acquisition. And indeed, as I understand it, the Twitch acquisition was largely done in Amazon stock. So think about that, 2014 Amazon stock versus now Amazon stock.
If you'd hodled that to now, you'd be like richer than anyone in the history of the universe, wouldn't you? Like,
let's just say people like Alex and Scoots probably never have to work again. There are people who are very, very wealthy as a result of the deal that occurred. But effectively, Twitch wanted to acquire these teams because they thought that it would be a good part of their portfolio and that it would be helpful to attract sponsors, especially too because of Alex's expertise in getting endemic sponsors on board. He would be a valuable asset to Twitch. But what ended up happening is that there was basically all of the other then North American teams. So TSM, Cloud9, Team Liquid, they viewed this as a massive threat and conflict of interest, because all of a sudden, remember that they are trying to make deals themselves with Twitch, and they are trying to sign players in various games. And now all of a sudden, they have to compete with Twitch to sign players and teams, because now Twitch, who is their streaming platform, who they have, these team-wide sponsorship deals with, that they're receiving money from Twitch in response to, in return for their players to be streaming on the Twitch platform exclusively. Now, all of a sudden, Twitch itself, who owns EG and is Amazon, remember, so a massive, massive company, is out there in the market basically trying to outbid these teams for players. So it was a very fucked up relationship, to be fair to those team owners, but they were also just outrageous in the way that they responded to this. I know you know a lot about this, Richard.
Well, so yeah, this is an interesting time for me, right? Because this was right. I heard, so this will be new information, I imagine, some of it. So right, when the Alliance thing was popping off, and the basically you had this Alliance and EG, they were meant to be operating independently, but of course they weren't. I remember like back channeling to like Valve and like other tournament operators basically saying like, you absolutely cannot allow these guys to compete. It's a huge conflict of interest. There's, we'd already had instances by this point, like League of Legends, which you'll have a better memory of, both of you guys, but I think we'd already had that Samsung Blue, Samsung White thing. We'd already had, there was a tournament, and I won't say the name of the sponsor, but basically, again, it was in League of Legends, where you got to pick your opponent, and the sponsor said to the 3 teams they sponsored, like, out of the 6, don't pick each other, because then we'll have more brand awareness if you were all to win. We don't want our sponsor, teams we sponsor eliminating each other. So we were already getting into this like fucked up nightmare, which, we're living in it now. Spoiler, guys. But back then it was just the start of a fucked up nightmare. And so I was telling everybody that would listen, like, dudes, like, this Good Game agency he set up it's bullshit. It's a front. The Alliance and EG aren't independent. They share sponsors. They share information. They share staff. So I was trying to get it so someone would definitively take a stand. And I think the only people that really did. I remember someone at Valve told them it was going to be a problem if they didn't transfer ownership and they wanted to both be at the next TI. And it was explicitly told to Alex. Anyway, so I started racking my brain because I'm like, if no one's going to do anything, how the fuck can we stop this bullshit? And so I did what I usually do. I hit the bricks. I started looking into the law. And as Duncan will tell you, I must have something wrong with my brain because I'll sit down with big legal books and filings and statutes, and I read legal documentation all the time from court cases, and I'm always looking for like the mechanism through which the wrongdoing can be proven retroactively. Like, you're doing it, and I know it's bullshit. I just don't know which law it breaks or how you could, kind of engineer it so the government would take an interest or whatever. So anyway, I realized that the Good Game agency were basically operating illegally in the state of California. Because they were calling themselves I can read you the report. I reported and put this out publicly. For me, this was one of my best pieces of journalism ever, by the way, and no one cared. This is like, when people always say to me, like, what are the articles, like, you remember fondness? It's got to be like the I by Power investigation or the Phantom Lord stuff. No, it's actually stuff like this. I know how unbelievably hard I had to work for this and the stakes that were involved, because like the Tfue case, this was sort of, years ahead of that, but pretty much the same thing. That this talent agency law in California that we all keep fucking with, and it's got the potential to just melt esports in California, and we're still just doing it, and we've never had the court case because everyone settles every time. So I was ahead of the curve by about 3 years, and this was how I was going to get my man. This is how I was finally going to stick it to Alex Garfield, right? Which was super important. Because he'd been my nemesis for a while. And now he was getting away with his conflict of interest stuff. So here it was, right? Amazon's $970 million acquisition of streaming megasite Twitch in August 2014 was a landmark moment in the burgeoning industry of esports and live streaming. Twitch followed with its own acquisition in December, buying up one of the most successful gaming talent agencies in esports, Good Game. But with that purchase, Twitch may have inadvertently put itself on uncertain footing as the intersection of esports and entertainment law has created a knotty and unprecedented legal conundrum. California, as the epicenter of the entertainment industry, has laws specifically governing the operation of talent agencies, and depending on your interpretation, Good Game may be violating some of them, and in turn, threatening the legitimacy of the contract it is therefore signed with its clients. Good Game refers to itself consistently as a talent agency and company. On its website, the company describes its client services as talent acquisition and management, and it promises to help people who want to work with the most popular, influential gamers in and around video games. We'll connect your brand with their reach, the company boasts. Twitch described its acquisition similarly. In its announcement of the purchase, Twitch called Good Game an all-in-one talent and content company focused on gaming and esports. Over the past decade, its staff of industry veterans has worked with teams, represented players, managed tournaments, created content, and brought numerous marquee advertisers into the gaming space. It appears, however, that Good Game may not even be a legally recognized talent agency. A check on the talent agency's license database for California shows no entry for Good Game. There's no evidence Good Game's CEO, Alex Garfield, who earned a bachelor's degree in sociology from Pomona College in 2008, has ever held a talent license. Under the California Talent Agencies Act, California Labor Code Section 1700, all talent agencies are required to be licensed by the state labor commissioner. Neither Garfield, Good Game, nor Twitch responded to a request for comment at publication time. If Good Game is in violation, it's technically a misdemeanor, said Matt Galzer, an entertainment lawyer at Greenberg Glusker's Entertainment Group, but no one would prosecute under this law. They could still qualify as a talent manager and do management work. It's not answerable just by knowing about their business and looking at the law, but there are additional potential consequences. Good Game's contracts with its clients could be invalidated, and some or even all of its commissions from them put at risk. And it's a super long article. There's like loads more to it, but basically that's what I did. I was like, there's no way any of this is above board. There's no way creating an agency to act as a front and then saying teams you own are the clients and almost the exclusive clients of that talent agency. There's no way that was kosher to begin with. And then when Twitch just come in,
I mean, the irony is that's what esports teams basically do these days, which is that they operate as agencies of which their professional players are the representatives for sponsorship reasons.
Yeah. So, I mean, that to me, I was like, right, I got him. All those contracts are going to have to be redone, right? Twitch are going to have to put a fucking statement out. We bought a talent agency. The California Labor Commission are going to come after fucking Twitch and everybody else. And even though it's a misdemeanor, there's probably going to be a fine. I was like, Richard's eating good tonight. Fuck all of y'all, right? But no, none of that happened. In fact, Twitch pretty much just like killed the story with silence. Nobody took it seriously. The California Labor Commission didn't come looking. No lawyers picked up the case. No contracts were invalidated. And what we then ended up with was this weird fucking era, which had a huge negative impact on my life and career by a weird quirk in it. We had Twitch owning 2 esports organizations and the talent agency that represented them and all of the talent that were on the books of that agency. So all of the other orgs, the TSMs, the Cloud9s, they're like, heyo, hang on. Surely Twitch is going to give preferential treatment to the Twitch-owned orgs. They're going to have them on the front page more often than us. If there's a sponsorship deal or an activation, they're going to go to them first. Well, we're your partners. And so this created this insane behind-the-scenes drama, which many of the players involved in tonight to this day.
They were afraid that because of the Amazon bankroll, that they were just going to be crushed in a business sense as well. Because you guys have to understand that in 2014, again, Alex was ahead of the curve on this one. He realized, I think, something very important, which is that there was going to be big money coming into esports. Yes. The trajectory, it was on this fucking rocket ship at the time, guys. Like the existence of Twitch and the existence of live streaming had made esports from an extremely niche thing that the three of us were part of in the early days when live streaming didn't exist, guys, and you had to watch replays or demos or like you had to do janky ass things in order to watch professional games. Now, all of a sudden, here was YouTube, here was Twitch, here was Own3D, right? Azubu, these other streaming services, and they were making it much more accessible and much more widespread and much more popular. And so basically there was a significant fear at this time that big companies were going to come in or professional sports owners was another one. Like, why would a professional sports owner who could absolutely destroy any esports teams in terms of bankroll without really even giving it a second thought? Like, it doesn't even cut into their bottom line. Because remember, in 2014, a player getting paid $100,000 was a lot of money. And in that era, like a lot of money, like the top paid players would make something like that from their orgs. So it would be really easy for any professional sports team to come in and say like, well, we can just take over this space. Like we can just make our own team. And it would be very hard for even evil geniuses to compete in that environment if, big spenders came in and wanted to do something. And basically everybody was afraid of just getting swatted like an insect. And so there was a real sense that you had to take on investment, or you had to find a professional sports owner to back you. And I think people in retrospect would say that these concerns were rather silly, because you needed the endemic knowledge in order to run the team. So it was much more likely that a partnership would be formed, which is eventually what happened. Right, guys? Like when we saw major sports teams come into the space, like the, Robert Kraft, they hilariously, they ended up hiring Huck to kind of manage their team, right? And they tried to get endemic people involved. Or they would create partnerships with endemic organizations, right? Or they'd invest, a professional sports team would invest into one of the existing, esports organizations. So it ended up being kind of overblown. But he was right in that they did need to take money in order to survive, because you had to be financially competitive with, multi-billion-dollar sports teams, right? And so I think that was part of the fear. And from Twitch's side, look at their goals after this, right? Because I think Alex Garfield and GGA provided a lot of what they wanted, which was instant access to esports teams and brands. Because remember, it was the esports teams and brands were the biggest things in 2013, 2012. It wasn't individual influencers yet at this time. Those influencers were the professional players, and EG was still the crown jewel. The EG was still the crown jewel in the North American esports crown, right?
Yeah.
They were still the biggest org in spite of the rise of things like TSN, and they still had the most money. And they still had the most sponsors. And so Twitch was getting, was these two esports teams. But I think most importantly, they were getting Alex and his staff
and
that were.
Yeah, they were geniuses at getting this stuff. And crucially, just sorry to cut you off, but the important thing you have to remember is by this point, we're talking early 2015 now, and obviously a little bit before that, Alex is done with the idea of just running orgs. He wants to get on to the next shit. He already knows that there is a limit to where an esports org can realistically go to. Do you know how he knows that? Because he took two orgs to that limit.
Yes.
he built not one but two successful orgs that were both like culturally distinct, had very strong brands, strong brand identity, strong sponsor synergy, and were successful. He did, like, you do understand that we think of the greats as people that do that one time, right? He did it twice with ease, right? And then he was looking at the turbocharging of live streaming at this point. The Amazon acquisition, it's the most squandered tech deal in the history of tech, right? Because they've done nothing with it, and word is behind the scenes they are actually even considering selling Twitch. There's a lot of chatter from tech industry people that is a now viable path that Amazon are looking into. You can decide how true you think that is. But, he, in 2015, saw, well, influencers are coming now. This is it. This is the era of the influencer. And I want to be an agent. Yep. And I want to be part of that, because that is going to be, so much bigger than esports.
Sure. And also, like, I think Twitch was also interested in operating esports leagues themselves. I mean, they did operate Rocket League themselves for a number of years. Like, they were very actively trying to, not only be the platform for esports, but they started to independently, they became a tournament operator and a circuit operator. And they had competitions that they wanted to run. And Alex was simply, I think, the best person to get sponsors for this. And I think Alex also thought, to your point, Richard, I can parlay my existing corporate relationships into bigger deals as the platform grows. Like, I already know all of these people. They kept re-upping with me. They trust me. They know that I run effective marketing for them. So why not just continue to grow as Twitch grows. But unfortunately, because of well, I mean, it's not, I guess it's not really unfortunately. Unfortunately for him, not necessarily unfortunately in general or for the industry, what ended up happening was the backlash by the rest of the owners was incredibly severe. And this was also a period that, I mean, it got really nasty, guys. Like people, a lot of these other teams were just actively lying about EG and Alex Garfield and the things that they had done and the kind of people that Alex and his team was. And it was, I mean, it was outrageous because the other owners were very insecure and very jealous of Evil Geniuses because of their success. And so when they saw the opportunity here to make a big stink about this Amazon/Twitch acquisition of EG, it was, I mean, the gloves came off, guys. Like there were tons of really gross rumors that were flying around the industry that were completely untrue about EG and the people who worked at EG. I mean, it was slanderous, right, Richard, in many ways?
Yeah. I mean, dude, you know, the key component here was, Alex had never had to deal with anyone as ruthless, if not more ruthless than him. You know, he went up against fucking teddy bears, man. So like Alex might be wearing the heavyweight belt, right? He might be the champ of the world. He never had to fight no Mike Tyson. You dig? Like he was going up against puppy dogs. He was going up against, you know, Jason Lake. Like,
who is a sweetheart.
Yeah, like, and more so now than ever. I mean, like, but even back when Jason Lake was mean, it was like the stories were like, well, he shouted at me one time, and you're like, all right, okay, yeah. Did he fuck up your career and blacklist you? And, no, he didn't do any of that. No. So I mean, like, Alex got to operate in a time where his corporate ruthlessness, it was never mirrored or reciprocated. In fact, I remember distinctly back in the old days when Alex was on the come up and they were building EG prior to the Good Game acquisition, people always thought they could be allies. They always thought, like, you know, like they used to give Alex the rising tide raises all ships speech over and over and over again, and he would just sort of like smile, and then, you know, you're getting Tywin fucking Lannister the next day. So I mean, when he met the cartel, when he met Steve Arnset, Reggie, and fucking Godfather Jack, his first time in his life he'd ever come up against anyone that was willing to go to the same lengths, if not further, as him to get what the fuck they wanted. And they deployed every single dark art you can to fuck somebody in business and fuck somebody where they live, right? Like, you know, because he was on the, he had just got to Twitch, and within a month he's on the outs because these guys, the shit they were saying, the shit they were threatening, you know, like there was even some stuff with Riot in this that one day is going to come out. Because remember, they were the heavy hitters in League. So if I do remember rightly, there was a period here where I think Brandon Beck was fucking brought in to mediate. Think about that. Think about that. Think about that. They brought in, because it was a League of Legends thing, you know, basically what happened was Cloud9, TSM, Team Liquid, and I think CLG were even folded in at this point. Like George, though, he's not like that. Hotshot was just sort of like, can I be in the room with you guys when you're planning the evil things?
It's also that Kelby May, who ran CLG, was now part of Good Game Agency. He actually was part of this acquisition.
Yeah. It was probably Kelby
that
side. It might have been Kelby who set up the thing. Because basically, so you've got CLG, you've got TSM, Cloud9, and Team Liquid, and they're all saying, like, if you keep this deal in place as it's structured now, where you own EG and you own Alliance, we can't be partners with you. You own our direct competitors, and you have the tools to give them disproportionate favors on a platform we need to do business. So fuck you if you don't,
and you have much more money than us.
Yeah, if you don't turn this around and change this, we're going to YouTube. And I think they were on the phone to Fwiz the same fucking day it was announced. They were like, listen, we'll just fuck off. We'll do one. And by the way, we'll take you to court if you try and hold us to the contracts and agreements, because we're pretty sure you just breached yours. And so that
Yeah.
was what they were up against. So they had to go to Alex going, yeah, there's been a few complications. Now, can you imagine, right, if you're Riot Games and you're like TSM and Cloud9 and these and Team Liquid, all these orgs are essential to your fucking ecosystem, as is Twitch, and you're a partner of Twitch as well, and suddenly your teams that, like, you know, you get to do all these cool little crossovers with them, you all exist in this little orbit, you've all built this little empire together, suddenly they're disgruntled and they're going to fuck off. Meanwhile, Evil Geniuses famously were no more for Dota than League of Legends. I know obviously that changed. Alliance, the same thing. So it wasn't even like, they weren't even in their world. And so obviously, yeah, that's when you bring in the Riot mediators. Like I said, I'm 99.9% sure that they were called in for the fucking sit down to try and chill everyone the fuck out. And it didn't work. And so EG suddenly were in this position where, through no fault of their own, all they've done is agree to be sold, right? Alex couldn't foresee this, and neither could Twitch.
And so the result of this was that basically Twitch had to handcuff EG and Alliance. And what I mean by that is that they had to freeze any acquisition of new rosters. So the term, basically what happened with EG was they were allowed to continue operating, but they couldn't get any rosters in games that they were not already a part of when this decision was made in, I believe, like early 2015. And any players that they needed to get in their old rosters, they actually just had to get players that nobody else wanted, because if they started to offer contracts to players that other esports teams like Liquid, Cloud9, TSM, they couldn't get into a bidding war with these teams, because the teams would go fucking mental. And basically all of them agreed that if they figured out that EG was trying to get a player that they wanted to sign, they would all just go apeshit together at Twitch.
Yep.
So it made it virtually impossible to run EG as an org, because they could only go after players that nobody else wanted, and only in games that they already
There was
existed
also
in.
some other shit I heard, like, where it was getting to the points of, like, you know, they didn't want Alex to negotiate for sponsors on their behalf.
Which is mental, because like that's like essentially just have the guy do the deal. That's like saying I don't want Warren Buffett to invest on my behalf.
Yeah,
like,
like,
do you like money or something?
So literally, one of the guys that we know is like a fucking, you know, solid expert in doing this thing. Their egos couldn't handle the idea if Alex had like landed them a big deal. So they said to executives, you know, like, listen, he's never negotiating for us, because that was the pivot. Like, Alex was going in there to be the negotiating guy for Twitch, and then when they said, "Oi, you can't have fucking two orgs," they went, "Listen, well, what about this then? He negotiates for you as well, and all these sick deals he brings in, you'll get them." Their egos couldn't handle it. They said, "Absolutely no chance. That's never happening. We negotiate our deals. We can't trust him." So even though he was completely removed from like team org ownership essentially, and was being airlifted into an executive position in what is functionally Amazon, really. I mean, yeah, it's Twitch, but it's owned by Amazon. So think about he would have been in his fucking element, but they wouldn't let him do it because, again, egos. And so this is where the problem starts. There's now nowhere to put Alex. You've brought him in to do these very specific things. You know, I heard there was like all sorts of crazy shit, man. Like they were fucking, I mean, put it this way. The one thing they did, because I don't want to talk about some of the dirt. There's a practice, you probably heard of it. It's called monstering. Where it's like you just constantly fling shit at someone. You just say all the heinous stuff. You can't prove it, but you say it in like, you know, transitory and ephemeral media. You just constantly imply negative stuff about people over and over and over again until people just get this vibe that they're just bad guys. Well, that's essentially what they did to Alex. And so, you know, for example, they said the whole deal, because it was done with someone Alex had historically been close to, who now happened to work at Twitch. They said they were complaining to other Twitch executives, saying the whole deal is, nepotistic nonsense, and that this could never work, and it would never work for you. And why would you ever own an org? He's just done this to give his friend loads of money. you know, and so the smear job that went on behind the scenes, and this is where, funnily enough, because remember, only in 2015, I'm reporting about this with the viewpoint, fuck Alex Garfield, right? He's breaking talent agency law. I'll use any mechanism to stop this conflict of interest bullshit. When I started hearing about what these guys were doing and how he'd been completely fucking neutered and his dream job was a nightmare inside of 4 weeks and it looked like his position was going to be untenable at Twitch, and then the stress exacerbated his personal health and all this other stuff, suddenly I was like, huh. Actually, what these guys are doing is really fucking bad. These guys are the assholes, you know. These are the bad dudes, and keep in mind as well. At this point, I mean, shit, we got all this VC money coming in that these guys are starting to piss up against the wall. You know, we're not that far away from the Echo Fox thing where they fuck Rick Fox. All of a sudden, I was kind of like, yeah, I'm gonna start digging into this. Actually, I'm gonna help Alex Garfield.
See more cool, funny, interesting clips based on topics from my content? Well, subscribe to this channel then, or, you know, be a pleb and don't.